Gordon, thank you very much and welcome back to College Green once again, where I'm joined by four parliamentarians who know Scotland very well. Nicola Sturgeon for the Liberal Democrats, Ian Murray for Labour, Deirdre Brock for the SNP and Alberto Costa for the Conservatives. Alberto, we'll start with you. We have, in political terms, out with the old, in with the new. How different is Theresa May going to be from David Cameron?
Well, I'd like to firstly pay tribute to David Cameron. I thought today, as he ended his premiership at PMQs, he showed the House of Commons what a balanced and quality leader of this country he's been. I welcome Theresa May's appointment as our new Premier. She is a different person from David Cameron. She's an individual who's very serious. She's the type of person that we need at this time, very calm, and will get on with the job of fulfilling the wishes of the British electorate following the EU referendum. So I'm confident that Theresa's going to not just unify my party, but much more importantly, unify the United Kingdom, speak to the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and others to bring them together to ensure that Britain's best interests are met. Alberto
Costa, you could almost be a television presenter because you introduced the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon very well there. Nicola Sturgeon, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I know you're pushed for time, so we do appreciate this. What type of a Prime Minister, as far as Scotland is concerned, do you want Theresa May to be?
Constructive and respectful. I respect the mandate she has. She said earlier in the week that Brexit means Brexit. Well, for England and Wales that is true, and while I regret that decision, I respect it. I hope the Prime Minister respects the mandate that the people of Scotland have given me as First Minister to protect our place in the European Union. So I hope to have a constructive relationship, but one that makes clear that I want to protect Scotland's interests and protect our place in the European Union.
Interestingly, this afternoon we've had the Scottish Secretary David Mundell on, and he has floated the idea that in some negotiations the Scottish Government could be a formal part of the Brexit negotiations on things like agriculture, on things like fishery. Is that something you find interesting?
Well, let's wait and see how these discussions unfold. I want us to be centrally involved, but I think it's an important point that I've got to stress here is I don't want Scotland to Brexit. I don't want Scotland to leave the European Union because that's not what Scotland voted for. So my priority is to find ways of protecting Scotland's place in Europe. And the UK negotiations, the UK discussions don't just have to have Scotland involved in that, but have to have us involved in a way that allows us to get all of the options on the table and properly discussed. So that's what I'll be seeking to achieve, and I hope the new Prime Minister is open to that.
We take it as read that you don't want to leave the European Union because that's the way that Scotland voted. But if the UK government was coming in and saying there is more flexibility, is that something you'd be interested in?
Well, flexibility for what purpose? If it's flexibility about involving us in, accepting that we're leaving the European Union, then I would be betraying the vote of the Scottish people if I simply accepted that. My mandate is to seek to find ways of protecting the position of Scotland within the EU. That's not just the mandate from the referendum, it's also the mandate I got from the Scottish Parliament the week after the referendum. So my priority is to protect Scotland's interests in Europe and to protect our status and place in the European Union. And my message to the Prime Minister and to the new government is that these negotiations must respect the differing views of Scotland and other parts of the UK. I met earlier on with the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, who takes exactly the same view as me, that there must be scope and flexibility in these discussions to allow different interests to be protected and discussed.
One final question, because I know you have got to go and do other interviews. How well do you know Theresa May, and from what you've seen, do you think the two of you can do business?
I approach any relationship like this in a constructive way. I've met Theresa May on I think a couple of occasions. I don't pretend to know her particularly well. I hope that will change in the weeks and months to come. But we have deep political differences, that's no secret, but we also have a duty, each of us, to work in the interests of the people that we serve, and that demands from both of us respect for each other's positions and a willingness to work together where we can, and that's certainly the approach that I'll be taking.
Nicola Sturgeon, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Let me carry on now with the panel discussion. Ian Murray, let me come to you. You've just heard the First Minister speaking there. It sounds as though she wants a grown-up relationship with the new Prime Minister.
Well, there has to be, and if one thing that David Cameron wasn't able to do, that Theresa May could perhaps do and change the narrative, is to have a stronger working relationship with the Scottish Government and vice versa. And this is a real opportunity to wipe the slate clean and start again, because devolution can only work with two leaders working very closely together. And we've said quite clearly, and I've laid a motion in the House of Commons this afternoon to say this, that not only does Theresa May have to have at the top of her entry the Brexit negotiations to respect Scotland's position with the EU, but also there's a significant mandate to keep Scotland protected inside the UK. We have two very strong mandates here that the Scottish people have given politicians, and Theresa May has to look at those two mandates, which means Scotland must stay in the UK and Scotland's position within the EU must be respected, which means the Scottish Government must be in those negotiations so that whatever happens come Brexit, Scotland doesn't lose out.
Nicola Sturgeon, indeed, how important is it that the two women who are now basically going to be in charge of British politics, in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, and down here, Theresa May, that they do get on? They may not be best buddies, but they can have a good working relationship.
It's obviously extremely important, and I know that David Cameron, early in his new premiership, came to Scotland, and there'll be a lot of interest in Theresa May going to Brussels, engaging with Germany and France. The Angela Merkel relationship will be highlighted by the media, but I also think the Nicola Sturgeon relationship will be a very important one. And Theresa May should, as a symbol of all of that, be visiting Edinburgh and be visiting the Scottish Parliament just as soon as possible over the next few days, I would argue.
Deirdre Brock, as, for want of a better phrase, good political PR, how important is it that perhaps Theresa May, very early on in her premiership, says, OK, I'll go to Edinburgh and I'll talk to you, let's see what we can agree on?
Well, I mean, while Scotland continues to remain within the United Kingdom, of course it's very important there's a good relationship, a good working relationship between the Prime Minister and our First Minister. But I think Ian, perhaps when he was speaking, neglected to mention that there really has been quite a significant change in attitude after Brexit from a number of people who were very strong anti-independence supporters, if you like, who were against supporting independence for the SNP.
A lot of SNP people, look at Angus, it was 55% voted to remain, 45% voted to stay. There's a lot of people in Scotland, although I didn't agree, I was on your side, I was in the Remain camp, but there's a lot of SNP voters that voted to leave the EU. You can't make those assumptions.
There are certain numbers of, yes, absolutely, and we have to look into the reasons for that without question. But I think, you know, a number of Tory voters have now come out saying very clearly to me, when they speak to me as a constituency MP, I'm getting emails all the time saying they are very upset about being pulled out of Europe against their will.
All the more reason why we need to work together, as Ian correctly said.
We have to recognise that Scotland made it very clear they wanted to stay in the European Union.
Not Murray. Murray, it was almost 50-50%.
Let's talk about another Murray. Let's talk about Ian Murray.
I'm concerned that I'm glad that Costa's not leader of the Tory party and Brock's not is leader of the SNP, because they're not willing to work together. Look, we are going through a very uncertain time. Nobody knows what Brexit looks like. Article 50 is not even on the cards yet. It'll be right at the top of the agenda. Let's get away from talking about independence. Let's get away from talking about adding more uncertainty to the Scottish economy and to Scottish jobs, and let's get down to the day-to-day work of working together to see how we can protect Scotland's position in the EU and protect its position in the UK. Everyone talks about mandates. That's the two mandates that the Scottish people have given to their leaders in Scotland and their leaders here at UK, and that's due be what they're putting every single hour into delivering.
Nicola Sturgeon, we've alluded to it, but it is perhaps a point worth making, isn't it? Not everyone in Scotland voted to remain in the European. There is a large body of Scotland, almost a third, which actually said we wanted to get out of the European Union.
That's exactly right, and you know, Scotland isn't quite as separate, quite as different in all of this as Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP would like to suggest. There are many people, colleagues of mine throughout the United Kingdom, some of them based here in the southeast of England, who feel as upset as many people in Scotland do about the Brexit vote. And indeed, you know, David Cameron is clearly a casualty of all of this. You know, he, for all the excellent performance that he had today in his final performance as Prime Minister, you know, he will go down in history as the man who made the strategic mistake which led to the demise of his premiership. So, you know, there are big issues afloat here, and at a time when many people in Scotland, many people in the UK are very anxious about the future, anxious about jobs, anxious about the economy. I think Ian is absolutely right. people have got to work together to make the best of a very unexpected and potentially a very bad job. You know, this is a very difficult
Nicola
time.
Sturgeon does hit the nail on the head as well. Whilst we're all talking about the Brexit negotiations, we can't forget about the people who did vote to leave. And it's now up to our political leaders, and we'll certainly be doing this too, to listen to the third of Scots who wanted to leave, listen to why they wanted to leave, and address those issues. So it's not just about the constitutional issues, these are incredibly important things that we have to deal with.
Deirdre and then Alberto.
I was just going to say, I mean, of course, tomorrow I think the Standing Council of Economic Advisers regarding the European Union is sitting for the first time that Nicola Sturgeon put together, our First Minister. And so I think there we have a group, that's action being taken by the First Minister in an attempt to try and explore all the options available for us, but with the main aim of keeping Scotland in Europe, because, as I said, that is a clear mandate from the Scottish people, and certainly people in the independence referendum are very keen to talk about mandates there. So,
Alberto.
David, I had a one-to-one with Theresa a few days ago and we discussed Scotland, and she's willing and ready to discuss the future of the United Kingdom and Scotland's place within that with Nicola Sturgeon. All that we're asking, and I'm sure that Labour and Liberal Democrat parties join the Conservatives in this one, is that the SNP play fair, recognise that there was a large chunk of people that voted to leave. We need to unify Scotland as well as unify the whole of the United Kingdom and move forward. And as David Cameron said today, we are going to have a new relationship with the EU. Let's hope that that's a good, quality and strong relationship with the EU whilst respecting the Brexit result.
As we draw this conversation to a close, it is worth thinking that we have seen the passing of one Prime Minister today. We will get a new one later on today. Deirdre Brock, was it right that your party sat on its hands, in effect, at the end of PMQs? No applause. I could understand if you didn't want to cheer, but it did seem a little bit strange and out of the mood of the rest of the Commons.
I think, well, of course, Angus, our leader, stood and commended the Prime Minister on his work, that they worked together on the Srebrenica massacre, and of course wished him and his family well. But I think people need to appreciate the depth of feeling there is about David Cameron and his government and the effect of their policies, their austerity policies in particular, on very poor, very vulnerable people that we represent. When people come to my surgery, I'm sure it's the same for other elected members, talking about the difficulties they've had as a result of those policies. So it would be very hard for us under those circumstances, I think, and inappropriate to applaud a Prime Minister with that sort of track record.
Ian Murray, how did you feel about your side applauding a Tory Prime Minister?
Well, Nicola Sturgeon, who you've just spoke to, said last week that she wished the Prime Minister well and wished him well and his family and all that they do. I just think it's common courtesy when you have these kinds of events in the House of Commons for any politician of whichever colour to give them the recognition they deserve. Yes, I fundamentally disagree with him on policy, I fundamentally disagree with his ideology, but he served this country for 6 years. It's a tremendously difficult job. He's gone into public service for what he thinks are the right reasons, and I disagree with those, but I think it's right in a situation like today that the House of Commons pays proper tribute to someone who's given up a lot of their working life for public service.
I agree with you, and it was, I think, an unfortunate response from the SNP. It struck a sour note, and it didn't have to be that way. This was everyone giving thanks for the public service that the Prime Minister had given, and regardless of all you see deep divisions in the United States, but at the State of the Nation speech, everyone applauds the President, no matter what your views. And it could have been the same today, and it would have been so much better if it had been.
Nicola Sturgeon, Ian Murray, Deirdre Brock and Alberto Costa, thank you very much. Thank you for your forbearance with the noises off. Gordon, we've had protests, we've had sirens, we've had helicopters. We haven't had rain yet. You know what? It's just another quiet Wednesday at Westminster.
And you forgot music. I thought it was your backing band.
Yeah, we did have them at one point. They've now gone away again, but perhaps if you name a request, we'll see if they can do a tune for you.
All right, David, get them to record it and we'll play it next time we're on. Thanks for that.